Right. Good. So it should be spoken what to expect. With a slight distance, it doesn't work so well. So we saw at the end of
the date.
Oh yes. So it's Oil Gimel Kislev, Toshin Samches, Hemshech Ayin Beis, Chelik Alev, Amud Tov Kof Beis, Korav Laseifa, Tov Kof Gimel. So I think that's enough, right? Yeah. Good. So we saw the Amshocha Habo B'derech Hishtaushles, and the Amshocha Habo Milamayla Miseda Hishtaushles. And we saw that that even though from Arich, the Madrega or the Klodas Ayin of Arich Anpin to Chochma, the Atzilus was derech Cyrus Bilvad. Nonetheless, we said that the Seder from Lamaila Mea Chochma to Chochma, which is derech Cyrus, but that's not Ayin from the Ilava Olu. Nonetheless, it's considered that, or it's all part of the Geder, we saw the Lashon Geder, of the Geder of Hishtaushlos. It's not the union of what we described as Hishtaushlos Lashon Shils, the Shil Shel union Milmaila Lamata, but even that the alien is Nimshach El Tachtein, and even from Kiruv or even Mahus, and even from Cyrus is a even Amshocha B'derech Dilub, not B'derech Ilava Olo. So we saw a wondrous Nakuda that the Indian Seder Hishtaushlos was determined by the Ratzon HaPoshut of the Eibishter Baruch Hu in close Indian Hishtaushlos. That the Eibishter, from the beginning of all the Seder, of all the Giluyim and all the Amshochas that brought about the Hishtaushlos B'Puyo, even in the Madregas Koidem HaTzimtzum, we saw that the Aliyas HaRotzen Al Inyan HaOlemes, or that was a Rotzen Miyuchad She'inyoni Hu Hishtaushlos, and that the Iker Rotzen, which is Lahachil Velivro, it brought down in the Kislev Arizal, is going to get to the Inyan what we call Hishtaushlos Olemes. The way the Rotzen foresaw that Hishtaushlos, and the way the Rotzen was koiveya that Hishtaushlos, wasn't only in the Inyan von Ilava Olel Bilvad. Even in the Inyanim which are Shaloi B'derech Ilava Olel, Ela B'derech Dilug or Richuk Ha'erech somewhat. But that's the Inyan of the Cyrus from, if we take the Inyan from Olam Abriya to Chochma the Yetzira, or if we take the Inyan from Chochma the Briya from Malchus Tatzilas, then these Amshochas are B'derech Cyrus, but that's a Inyan not Ilava Olel, it's Inyan from Richuk Ha'erech. But that was considered, that was foreseen in the original Rotzen, that's how the whole Seder of the Yeridus Shefa, to bring about Hisavas and to be Makayim the Indian of the Seder, the Hisavas Oilamas, even from Lahachil, Benaget to the Spheres, and Livroi, Benaget to the Oilamas Priya, Yetzirah Vasir. Well, that was all kavua in the Rotzen Balias, Rotzen Eitel Hamatzi, or how he was Kedema Tzimtzum. Meaning that all of those inyonim which made the Hisavas Oilamas, but even that the Kilo Nimshachim or Mishtaushlim echad me'asheni. I feel that's not b'derech ileva oral b'inyonim musiyomim, but it's all called Seder Hishtauselus, because that's what the Eibishter saw originally from the very first beginning. Be'atzmusi is Baruch, all the way down, the Tachti is Asiyah, that there would be a Seder in the Gloim, and that's how he foresaw the whole passage of the Bria from one stage to another, as you might say, all the way down. In other words, that the original Ratzon foresaw the whole Seder of Eilamas ve'hisavuson mi'reish kol dagen at sof kol dagen. That's called Seder Hishtauselus. So in a Chanami, there's certain inyonim in that which are not b'derech ilav or olav kiruv, but they're called the Geder of Seder Hishtauselus, ki kach kova harotzen betchilas kol habrio, betchilas kol ha'inyonim, afilo in the madregas koidam chimtzum. And that was, we saw, that's called the Amshocha b'derech Hishtauselus. Aval Amshocha bol l'mayla misay Hishtauselus, we saw at the end of the last os. Hainu mashanim shel mipnimis atik or moichas timor shehu pnimis akesa. We saw that the pnimis of arik, which is moichas timor, chochma sheba arik, there is nimsha b'pnimis or b'slabshas atik. And we saw that atik is loshen ne'atak v'nivdal. Atik is mamish elakus, how he's moved out from the whole Seder of Hishtauselus Ho'elamas. Who bi'atzmei einu niklal in the union of Seder Hishtauselus. Which means that the Eibishter allowed there to be certain giluim which weren't necessarily niklal in the Seder Hishtauselus. And albeit the union from Moiches Timor is part of the Seder Hishtauselus, because Moiches Timor is, as we saw, it's Chochmas Timor, Chochmas Sheba Arik. But nonetheless, there's mislabish, but there are pnimius in that madrega of Moiches Timor, Ayin, which is Lagamri Lamaila from that whole Seder. And we saw that was the union from Toisefus, and what we described earlier in the whole Emshech Oyer Chodosh, Ayin from Ishchatches, that wasn't there, Tchila B'Aliyas Harotzen, I'll say Hishtauselus, that's the spirit. In other words, in the whole Aliyas Harotzen that the Eibishter had in the Klolos Ha'ishavus and the whole Seder of the Spheres and later the Oilamas, or those inyonim weren't included in that Aliyas Harotzen. We have to say that that's Ayin from Ishchatches, Kaviohu, Afilu Lagabi der Eibishter, even though this is Zicher, that in the Kavona Pnimius, how it is Mitzad Atzmus, that everything is Safui Galui V'Yadua Lefonov, all the inyonim, which will ever be and ever could be, but when I get to the inyan of Hishtauselus, then they're Michutz Le'inyan Seder Hazeh. And their entry into Seder Hishtauselus is purely Mitzad Eze Inyan, which is also not Lefi Hishtauselus, how it's Naget to the Odom. It doesn't come Lefi how he's part of Hishtauselus and all of Hishtauselus HaKoiches. He can only be Megala on and be more oirer, and that's what we saw, that there's also a Haloas Man to be Megala these inyonim which are chutz mi'a rotzen al klolos haseder. Even though we have to say that there's a rotzen also mitzad ha'atzmus mamish even on these inyonim, but they're not in the whole inyan of the seder, and kilu they wait and they wouldn't be Megala if there weren't these inyonim they Tachtoin, what he's mo'era b'haros man, and we saw that was the union from Ulka de Liebe, Mima'amakim Krosicha, Miprinas Oimek lo Oimek. In other words, it in Oimek Gufa, Ayin shal Oimek. V'hainu shal idei mamshichim mimochim gavoy me'id, shalamayla mehadroges Hishtauselus. It's beyond the whole union of that Geder and the Seder of steps, literally, which is the union of Hishtauselus. Ach, mikol mochim gam amshocha zu mukrach gam kein leire derech hatzinoides v'asayres the yud gimel tkunei dikno. He said, nonetheless, he said, even this level, which is chutz mi aliyas harotzen al inyan ha'ishtalshelus, it's also muchach. It has to somehow or another be obliged to be nimshach through the tzinoiros and the sayres of Yud Gimel Tkunei Dikna.
Yeah, and it says here, oimek lo-oimek, maybe the covenant, the oimek of the Adam calling to the oimek of...
Yes, but l'chayra, yeah, one can touch like that. But l'chayra, what it means is, even l'gabi amadrega, which is considered oimek, even that is an oimek. Understand? Oimek, li-oimek means oimek, l'gabi an oimek. Understand? Not that one oimek is calling to the other oimek, but it's more of a enochanami. But more correctly, the nakuda is, it's a oimek l'gabi a already established oimek. Dainu, if we take l'mayla, the uniform arich, afilu b'chitzayni yusei, is oimek l'gabi sayyidish talshos, the whole esospheres and everything all crueling down, even from clothes, even from rotzen, v'chulu. Yeah, moiches timoa im eich atik yoimin is mamshin mislabish moiches timoa, or that's oimek even l'gabi oimek. And by the Adam tshuva miyum kedalibu, we went into that various in one of the previous classes. It is a whole kol pnimoa the loyeshtama, and in that gufa two madregas. There is a uniform a kol pnimoa the loyeshtama mamish even l'gabi a kol pnimoa the loyeshtama. That's even tshuva, even oimekle, yeah, lo oimek, and that's mo'ira, and that's the lowest man to be mo'ira, to even atik yoimen, how it's found, be a slabshus pnimios. However, what is very noticeable, what you might call almost the expression violet, is the lashon mukrach. That even this gilui, or this amshocha, we won't call it gilui because it's really lamayla mi gilui, or this inyan atzmi shelamayla mi ishtausheles and lamayla mi hadroges rotzen al ishtausheles is mukhrach. It must and it has to be nimshach through what you might call the established ways of Sayyidish Taushel. Because the infant Yud Gimel Tkuni Tikna, we pointed out that in Moiches Timoa itself, there's a level which is only Sosum Stimoa Lagabi de Mekablin Bilvad. And we saw that was Ayin from Moiserei Moichin, and that was Achitanius Lagabi, the Pneumius of Moiches Timoa, which is Mamishati. So therefore, the Yud Gimel Tkuni Detikna, they have a certain shaykhs also, these Taushelas, because that's the Indian how it's nimshel mitzad chitanius moiches timoa. That's also called Yud Gimel Tkuni Dikna. However, he said that those same Yud Gimel Tkuni Dikna, they become a medium through which the atzmiyas of moiches timoa, the Ainu Reisha Delois Yada, or pnimisatik mamish, they're going to be nimshach through the same Yud Gimel Tkini Dikno. And he said it has to be there, mukhrach. And then he goes on to say that through the tsenoiros vasayris. So what's this Lashon tsenoiros all of a sudden? Sayris we've been talking about the whole time. All of a sudden the Lashon tsenoiros and sayris. So we're going to see l'choira that inside this gufa there's an Indian which is chitonias, and then we're going to see there's an Indian inside this gufa which is shaykh only to panemias, and that's what we pointed out in a previous class, that tzaydas have in themselves two inyanim. They have the hollow, how do you call it, the actual outside, or the reed, the actual shell of the sayah, yeah, but that's the what you might call the bamboo on the outside, as it were, and then there's a hollow pnimi inside. So when he says the union from sayres via chinoiros, he's talking about that's a reference to the fact that all sayres have in themselves the chitonias, and then they have a union shell. Pneumias, well, that's the tzinoya, the inner pnimis of the Seir. But yesh that when the Amshocha Atzmis occurs, then the Ike in the side is that Sinor Pnimi. The outside is only a min Marvel, but only a min Symptom Atzmias, which allows and brings that the Atzmias comes into a certain symptom or his symptoms, certain katness, not katness be'etzim come over. And the day the tzinner of the siders. It's that the chitzenius of the siders is more sharp to the outside of the siders. Just the fact that there's a symptom. And that gufa goes through the pnimis of the side of a nizdos of the rika. And then there's another inyan inside us where the whole inyan of the seir is only to bring, and that's this idea of a funnel, it's only to bring the etzem shefa, kamoishu, derech that tzimtzum, of a bli lishanais et atzmius ha-shefa. The thing remains an etzem. And mamira, that's the pshat, that it's mukhrach leiret. Yesh lema the view and that ocean mukhrach it has to go down through the inyan of the tzenoides of Istauselis, which are the Yud Gimel dignate in Prat, and later Beklal the inyan of Istauselis, particularly the Siders Shabahim. Why do we say it's Mukhrach? Because we're talking about the Amshocha of an Atzmias. In Amira, an Atzmias can only be Nimshak for Moishahu. Is Amira Etzem is Lamayla Mehelem Vagilo. In Etzem itself, not Shach, not Helem, but not Giloi. And if in order to bring down the Atzmas, you've got to, as it were, fakretch the Atzmas in such a way that it'll be able to come into the limited area that you want it. And it's not Ayin for Makiv. Now Makiv is where you've got oiros which are ha'oras, but they're ha'oras which are too big for the makablim, and therefore they're meir, but they're not makiv. And in that kufi you can have kama inyonim. Of a so the makiv is only a min chitzonius azar, kemavur, bekama makaimas. Of as a etzem should be nimshach, and the etzem atzmusi is atzmius of an atzmus should be nimshach, well that has to go through a tzamshtumus musuyemas. It's got to go in a way like a funnel. It's something which will bring it and allow it to enter the whole area that we're talking about. And that's El Dera where we find the famous Loshen. And I saw it put down in, it's interesting, I saw it put down on some of our, close to where we're learning. And so it's interesting how there always seems to be some sort of connection between the two inyonim. And that is Tzimtzem, that the Eibusha will mitzamtzem shchinosei bein shnei badei orein. In other words, that once the sanctuary was built, then the Eibusha used to talk to Moshe Rabbeinu, Emes used to talk to him inside the Mishkan, but first of all the coal was yered bein shnei badei orein, and then it was v'yetze derech ha'pareches, and it was b'tech Ulam, and Moshe Rabbeinu heard it, and then he went out and gave it. He went out and gave it over to Yidden, and so our sages call that whole Gilui Tzimtzem Shchinosei Bein Shnei Badei Arein, and so Orein, and so this is Mavaya that when you say Tzimtzem Shnei Shchinosei Bein Shnei Badei Orein, what you mean is that the etzem shechina itself, the etzem atzmis of the shechina, that's how they call it Constantina, it crashed itself in such a way that it was able to appear and talk in Shnei Badei. In other words, you just took the etzem kamoishu and made it appear in a smaller place, as you might say, in a limited place of it. This is the etzem. It's an ishkamakiv, and it's even in a way, does it the pnimius of pnimia. In other words, that in pnimius kufa, does it the etzem pnimius, which is meant to be in Pnimiyah, or can only be in Pnimiyah. So that's what it is Mukhrach. It has to be that way, because otherwise the etzem is just too etzem. It's not going to be able kaviyachol to appear in a given way. The etzem has to catch its own self in order to appear in a given mokim or in a given inyan, manas lifil et inyan ha'etzem. That's what the Rebbe says, that it's muchrach, gamkein later derech ha-tzinoiros v'asaidos, and we've made the deal of tzinoidos v'asaidos, after became nikros el ha'mayla misay the ishtausvus, given shesheresh hamshachazu, whom we reishet lo is yadu mi moichas tir, stimoa, reishet lo is yadu means pnimisatik mamish. And where is that? That's in moichas tir? In chokmas timoa, in pnimis chokmas timoa. Here we see that the atzmius davke has to go also through the tzinoiros, and it doesn't come b'derech makif, because a makif is only in oyer, a makif is only in ha'ora. So you have a higher ha'ora, a more metzumtzum dika ha'ora. The higher ha'ora is meir derech makif. Of a atzmius manish, atzmius kommt. It has, since we want atzmius to be begoled to the makablim, then it's got to come in a way that it goes through. I say begoled, that it'll be mashpia and noisenes atzmiusay. Lea makablim, it goes in a oiv morakams davki be itamtzemus derech the sides of say the histaukshalos. Even though those sides themselves are in Seidi Shtaush Kufa Hecher Ayin, or called Seidi Shtaush, or in the Seidi Kufa the Pnimis and the Sinoer Bilvad of the and Yeshloim, that Loshen Sinoer is a remiss to the fact that when you take a funnel, for example, you put a shefa into the Sinoer, that all it does is leave the shefa as it is, but it just attempts that it should be able to appear in a certain calculated point or area. That's Yesh Lema does it in it. And therefore, Kol there is a remez, and it's well known that what the Rizal said, that Liotzid will be the Gilui of Pnimisatim. That all them shochers ad Yiskalis of Melech HaMashiach, all them Beis Yuevim, me Chitei Niyasatik, or me Arich, or Chayzn, I feel the highest in Yonah. But Mashiach will be Megalad even Pnimis, I think I know them Shocha Atzmius Mamish. And so that's going to be Davki Boim Joya Pnimi Kiyadua. Aliyasid all the Inyonim are going to be Nimshach Davki Boer Pnimi. In other words, not that that's going to be Ayin Mitzumtzum Ha'ora Mitzumtzemus, which is now Meir B'Derech Pnimi. It's going to be the Atzmas. But like he says, Zeh Mukhrach Lava Gamkin derech the tzinoiros, but it'll be over derech the pnimius and atzmis of the tzinoiros gufia. In other words, what is the ike is that cholol of that tzinoir pnimi inside the seyah. Did we learn the kitzur last time? I suppose nobody remembers. I don't think we did. No.
Yossi said he didn't.
Huh?
Yossi said he didn't.
We didn't.
We did not.
Right.
See, Tzidlavo, it's still going to be derech tzaris.
Huh?
But Tzidlavo is still going to be
Yeah. The Yosid Love will be the Yud Gil Mitzrachim and the Inyan from Sidis, and then even more than that, there'll be all the Inyanim of Histaukshalos. But we'll be weaving in that the Atzmius Mamish.
See, because if it's a tzimtzum, the definition can't be a tzim.
Oh, that's what we're saying. There are two different types of tzimtzum. One tzimtzum is where you're masalik at the beginning, the etzim of what you're dealing with, and you leave only ha'oras, yeah? And then in those ha'oras you make miutim, or you make halomas of a stadium, yeah? Or where you're bringing the atzmius mamish, and all you do is press the atzmius, listen. And you had a quote, verquetscht, like a concertina, you just take the whole thing and push it into a smaller area. And that's a pshat for that Loshen Tzimtzem Shchinos Bein Shnei Badiol. He pushed it in between the two Badiol. That's what we call Tzimtzum Ha'etzem, or his Tzamtzemus or Atzmim. That's what he's talking about here. Those are the pshat. That's going to be the oifen of all the Amshachas Liyasi. That all of them will come, but the oilemus will still be there, and all of them will come. And yet, nonetheless, the atzmus will be miskala b'derech hatzinoiros v'asayros v'chulu, or the etzem atzmi itself will be nimshach. That's what he said. That's Nakuda what is must be here.
It was a tamtzit in the previous instance.
Yeah, it's not a tamtzit either. Because a tamtzit is also, how do you call it, kfitza mi ha'inyonim. No, the atzmis mount, not just a tamtzit. The atzmis mount. Tamtzit is like a form of taking out of it, leaving over. The etzim kamoy shul, that's a pshat tzimtzum shchinos. That the etzim shchina itself came shchinosay. The etzim how he's mamish miyuchad im shchinosay. So die savas hachochma umibchinas sayres the moichasti the hinei mazel v'neitzer or neitzer chesed or v'neitzer chesed or however we'll go with it. Yesh by pnimis v'cheh. We saw that Misham Nimshochin Beis Bechinas Moichim. And we saw the Hine Ishtaushels as Firas who Bechinas Leva Olo. Yeah, Beis Bechinas Moichim, we saw that was in the Machif the Yosh, which is Shai to the Makablim. We saw that was only the Gabi Moichas Dimor, there was only Moiseres of the Moichim. But the Amshocha Bechinas Atzmius Ati, which is the Machif the Choize, if that is Nimshot, then that's Atzmius Hamoichim, not Atzmius Moichas Dimor. The Hine Ishtaushels as Firas who Bechinas Leva Olo. Gam ya Kesser la Chochma Shuhu B'derech Sayres. Shezo Racha Orha Lo Yaha Atzmius Kamomi Chochma Labino Mi Bin Lamidas. So if it's only a ha'ora and not a ha'ora which has got the atzmius in it, then it's not ishtaushel. We call mohim gamzeu seidehish taushel. Mipnei shekein nimdad b'aliyas harotzen b'tchilo. In the etzem madregas, in the madrega koida matzimtzon, which we call aliyas harotzen, that's how it was oiler, that's how it was meshuar, or that whole meaning of Reish Kol Dag and Sof Kol Dag in Mechubarim Mishtaushelim Zemize. Yesh Moichin de la Maila Mishtaushelim. Now, why do we call it Moichin? It's coming from Moichas Timor. It's in and is also Chochma. But in that Chochma, go for the Gila of the Etzer. Vahainu Shalei Nimdad Baliyas Harotzen. Vanim Shochin Gam Kein Derech HaSayreis. We're not going to be much, but the Pnimius of that Indian, how the Nimshar Derech HaSayres, and will be Mefater that Indian, which I just said, going to get to the Amshocha Atzmi. V'Inyan hu, the Amshocha, shall be Seidish Taushles, he mipchinas Arich, Arich Anpin, Shur Shanet Solim. Shezehu Masha Shayach Ela Nitzolim. That's well known that we saw that Moichas Timor is Chochma Shabarich. Imam Hela, there's a Indian in Moichas Timor, which is shy to Arich. So even though that's a makif, but we saw it's a Gabi Atzilas, it was a makif of Eur Yoshua. It's a makif which is shy to come to them, Kablim, and to be misgalit to them. Therefore, it's a union of Kiruv al Chaponim to the Makablim, and we saw that that's Shurish on Netzolim, Shezo Masha Shayach Ela Netzolim. In other words, why do we say that Arich B'derech Klau? We use the expression as Shurish HaNetzolim. That's what we say. And Atik is moved on me HaNetzolim. Ki Sof Koso, for those reasons which we just gave, Arich is shy to the Netzolim. Ukenoida, the Arich Anpin Upchinas Rotzen. Why is it called Makif, but nonetheless shy to the Netzolim? Because it's an Indian from Rotzen. But he said, Hainu, what sort of Indian in Rotzen? Not a Rotzen Achmi, which is moved down Mikol Hainyonim, but as a Rotzen, which is Rotzena Yizbara, but even Aishtauselas. Now we just saw that even in Aliyas Rotzen, Koida Matzimtzum, or the whole purpose of that Rotzen was to determine the whole Seder and to be Megala and, as it were, want and determine the whole Seder of Ishtauselas. And if that's what we call Arich Rotzen, we mean that Rotzen, or that Indian of the Aliyas Rotzen. That's what he says now. Ubishar Shei, Ubchinas Rotzen, Poshut, Erein Seif, She'ola Beretzeina Ilahat Silva, Livrei. Oh, that's what we call the Aliyas Rotzen, how it was Kodemat. And that Aliyas Rotzen, Bi'ikar, was concerned with the union of livroi, lahachil, ulivroi. First of all, to be megalad on the side of the spheres from Ach and then through Akudim with the whole leaders into Atzilas, and then the union of Yesh Ayin from Malchus Atzilas into the Bria Yetzirah Vasiyah, and again that's got in itself Mamish Ayin and Yesh Ayin. But we saw that nonetheless, even those Amshochas which have got in themselves Ayinian from Shaloi Be'erach, and it's called Cyrus, nonetheless it's all in that first Aliyah Sarotzen in Aricha, that's called Seidah Shtaushel, or the Rotzen for Seidah Shtaushel. Mikol Mokim, Yosef, Rat Shoyrish Anei Tzolim, since however it's only Kaviochel Shoyrish Anei Tzolim, Al Kain Ef Sheshayum Shul Mimeno B'Chochma Rach Alidei B'Chinas Cyrus Levad. V'Loi K'moy Michochma Labina Shehu B'Derech Ileva. So says the Rebbe, that expression Rach, we have to be careful what he means. Mikol Mohim LeYosei Rach Shoyrish. In other words, that the Rach is Kilu not terribly cutting off. What it means that he's only Shoyrish on Netzalim. He's not really Netzalim, he's not really close to Netzalim, even though he's their Shoyrish. In other words, he's the Shoyrish of Netzalim, like Rotzen can be a Shoyrish to something. So even though Rotzen is moved out from all things that it wants, but there's a Rotzen which is close more to a Seder. So we saw that was the Aliyah Sarotzen, to bring about the whole Seder of Ishtaushelas. Therefore, you can't really say that Arich is a close Makir Vishorish to the Spheres and Atzilas, because it's Rotzen. It's moved over here. So, it's close to them in the sense that it's the Rotzen already, how it's been Megala itself for that Inyan b'miyuchad, that it should bring about lahatzil eventually livroi. And so therefore he says, it's a shoyrish to the netzolim. But since it's only a shoyrish and not mamish begolu to them, then it can only be nimshach into chokma derech cyrus. In other words, that even from arich, the ikar gilu is the chokma is derech cyrus. V'loik moi mi chokma labina. Shehu derech ileva, although that's what we saw in the previous chapter, that once you get into the actual spheres, beineihem and beinatzmom, then it's a inyan from ileva, it's a inyan from ileva olo. So that's what we've sort of been to this whole inyan in Oishis Acherim in the previous chapters. And that when we said that the Hatzisavas of Chochma Gruya and Atzilas from Moiches Timur was Derech Cyrus, meaning how the Cyrus are a Giloi of the Kiruv of the Machiv of Oyer Yosha to the Makabli. In other words, that whole Machiv, which is only Chitzenius Moiches Timur, but the Machiv B'derech Kiruv Ela Makablim, and that's his Rotzen to bring about the union of spheres and eventually Livroi. Therefore, the Cyrus which are Nimshochim are B'derech Kiruv to the union for Chochma, even though they're Cyrus, and therefore, generally speaking, they're Seidahi. The difference is that that's Cyrus, and once you get into the spheres, then it's Iliva. Vagam, the Abova Eimor. This is not Arikno, this is what Chochma Bina. Vagam, the Abova Eimor, Gam Kein Malbishim Lezroya, is the Arich, Shezeo Amshocha Shaloi Alidei Cyrus. Zehu, Miprinas Zayin Tachtoinim, the Arich Ampi. Aber mit Gimel Rishoina is the Arich ein nimshach rach alidei Cyrus Levot. So here the Rebbe comes up with a kasha occurs in numerous places in this type of kasha, and that is we find that one of the main places where this thing becomes mentioned and mavur is in the Siddur of the Alter Rebbe in the Haggadah Shel Pesach, but again to Yetzias Mitzrayim. And we said, what do you mean that we went out of all Medidas Vagbolas in Yetzias There was in from the Pari became bottle and the Eden went out. Well, that was because the what you call Abba Va'emo, how they are in Atzilus, they were malbish the Zroyois the Arich Anpin. In other words, that the arms, or what you might call the muscles of Arich, came down and entered Bepnimius into what is the Mochi of Sedi Stautzlus in the spheres of Oilam Asatzmom. In Mamela, there became a big yontu that Mavish, the Lamaila Mi Medida Vagborach, like we just saw, it's always Sherish of Mochitin, it's not Netzalem, it's Sherish of Mochitin. That came down and entered Mamish Chochma Bina, and remember that caused the Yitzhia in Chochma Bina, V'kola Mishtaushel Imeyem, a Yitzhia Mikola Medidas Vagborach. That's called Yitzias Mitzrayim, and that's the whole, one of the big kavonas on the Laila Seder, that Zroya is the Arich Hanpin, Mislabshim, Be'Abba Va'ema. Mamela, that took everything out of Seder Ha'ishtaus. So the Rebbe said, that there's such a thing where Ari can be mamish mislavish in Chochmah Bina. And he was saying, no way. The only way Chochmah can be makabel from Ari is their Cyrus Buva. So what's the difference? That he was saying that the Zroya is mamish, they're the Zroyas of Ari Hanpin and mamish mislavish in Chochmah Bina. Then that means that Al Choponim, the Midas, Royas means the inner from Midas, Al Choponim, the Midas of Arich, Mamish Mislavi Pepnimis in Chochmah Binada, Atzilas. And here we say now that Chochmah is only Makabel, and Cyrus we pointed out is only in here, particularly when it's coming B'derach Oyer Yosha, then Cyrus is only in for Tzimtzum Chitonius Bilvad. So what's it the union? So the tells up there. The Kamer Makayim says that En Lachanami by Yitzis Mitzrayim there was Taka Gilif and Arich, but it was only Mizayin Taktuinim the Arich. It was only from the Midas. And therefore Zroyois the Arich means Chesed of Gvura. And Mamir it was only from the Midas Chagas, Nahim and Malchus. But that's the union of Zayin Taktuinim. Avo Migimor Rishayinais the Arich. And now that'll be Nicha, that'll make good sense, because Gimel Rishaynes means Moichas Timor. Gimel Rishaynes means Mamish Dine from Chokma, this the Arik, which is Moichas Timor. And Mamela from Moichas Timor to be Nimshach in the Chokma, that's only the side is Bilvad. Over the lower levels of Arik, Ayin Lachadami, they can be Nimshach, but they're Pnimius into Chokma Ubir. Until we say, the Chochmah Bina, a malbish, the Zreyas of Arikhan. And Mamela, what's the beer with them? Over there in the city we make a huge, big, Harikut Yontef out of it. That the slabses of Arik, that caused Yitzias Mitzrayim, Yitzhia, we call him Medidas Vakbolas. Pari became bottle, because his Achiz was also in Arik Yadua. What they're going to do is, as he became bottle, and Mitzrayim became bottle, and all the Giluim of the Laila Seder, and they're going to Inyan. Why do we say that that's only Kilo Zayin Tatoinim, because it's not yet Mamish, the Amitis Inyan of the Gilui of Arik be Atzmusa, which is Gimel Rishayin. So we could say that the Nakuda is like the Altar brings over there in Perik Lamed Aleph, that Ein Lachanami Yitzis Mitzrayim was a tremendous Inyan of it had in itself a certain Inyan Ki Boracha Am. It had an Inyan from Bricha. But the Inyan from Bricha means that Sokosof, not the Yidden were ready for that really, and not the world was mamish ready for that. In other words, that not Yidden were mamish a Keili, as is one on, they weren't a Keili yet. They had to be the Inyan from Sfiras Oima, even though the Sfiras Oima wasn't a mitzvah yet at that point. Or it had to be a Miyain, Sfiras Oima Kamavu in the Ran at the end of the Psachim, that they were Zeichet to Sfiras Oima, they counted when they got to even though they didn't actually have the mitzvah, And then there was all the Indian of Yer Ravaya, Al Hazan, they came down specially, and Kilo. It all had to get together in a way that they weren't really mamish mitzad pnimis avidosam. I feel like the Sfiras Oima, they weren't really mamish muchonim. If a middle be'iger, it was no Mailala Lamata. And that's what the Rebbe says here, that the whole Yitzhak Medida Vagbola was only, ultimately speaking, a relative Yitzhak. Even though boys are regular, Gabi Mitzrayim, it was enough to be Mavatl Mitzrayim, it was enough that didn't should be able to go out and fill a Lamaila Me'ateva. Although later they had to get cracking in order to get to Mount Sinai and to receive the Torah, and there had to be some form of further developments, and Be'ika, what you might call a tremendous Yerid, a Milmaila, but that's after the Shmaya. And therefore, said the Rebbe, Sof, it's only a Slabshis, Pnimius, a design Taktoinim of the Mochev Rishonis. It's not the immediate scene of the Gimel Rishonis, what's Boiches Timor Mamish, that can't come by even, because that can only come by in a Ashairis. After Yitzhak Mitzrayim, we're heading for bigger things, as you might say. The ultimate Amshocha we're looking for is Mamish, the Amshocha of Moiches Timor. Still more of a ratio to Lois Yada, and that's going to be Nimsha. Yeah, Kuidam in our even when it comes. Yeah, Derek, a Chitainis, like we saw. Yeah, and then ultimately there's going to be these scholars at the Pnimis the Atzmi, Shaloi Hoya, Bekila, Bekol, Arotzen, to say the high, he's Stalzler. And the Ike, in that is Leos, the Ike Sleimus, at their minion, is Leosid, Biscalas Hakrev von Melech. Yeah, because Galus HaKreiva for Melech HaMashiach. Oh, man. Rabbeinu Shalom Ad Masa.
Ad Masa.
Mit der ganzen Riches. That's not a kasha. Yes, aber Avo mi Gimel Rishoin is Dari Ein Nimshach Rahale Dibchin Seiris Levar. Omikol, okay? Nikra Hamshocha Zu Seide Hishtaushalos. Even that is called Seide Hishtaushalos. Even it's Nimshach, there are Seides. And we get the whole Gili from Moiches Timor Mamish into Chokma Datzilas. Manneres, that's also Seide Hishtaushalos. Hamshocha, he Mefinas Arich Anpin. Emes from Gimel Rishoines, Ovasok so it's from Arich. In other words, like we saw the Makif de Yosho, which is at Makabnim, who Beminin Esesfir. Other Rabbi said the Rabbi, the whole Inyan from Arich, if we go, Mitzad, here we mean the close Inyan of Arich, if we go Mitzad the Sphiris Ariyah, Mitzad Chitzayini Yusom, it's well known that there's a famous lotion, Lefiyomim, Akesa Nimne, Beminin Esesfir, Lefiyomim, Ein Akesa Nimne. If you go mitzad the Chitoniya saying on him, then Keser is Nimna as one of the Sesphiras. And what is that? That's Ini van Arich. Yeah? The clothes Ini van Arich is Nimna as one of the Sesphiras. So he said that Inyan of the Amshocha from Gimel Rishonis, albeit the Arich, albeit even that it's Chitoniya, the Machif of Yoshu Bilvad, he said that's how it is, that Arich is Bemini Esses. But who shares on Erzolim, it's still the Indian which shot an Erzol. Vehine said already, I'm Shochas Asaides, Hein me Moiches Timor. Ach so, me Prinz Chitanius, the Chochmas Timor, Hainu Mashu, Mochele Chochma. Vahainu Prinz Asosum, Shelagabi Amikabli. Well, that's what we're learning all the time. Now the Rebbe restates it. Or that old Seder, how from Chochmas Timor, you get, albeit Ayin from Tzaidet, and you get into Chochma Datzilas from the Gimel Rishonis of Arich albeit, but since it goes in that even which is the Makif, the Yosho, and so forth, so Shait the Mekablim, therefore it's all, as it were, Ayin from Chitonius. Via, okay, Amshocha Zu, Hagam Shiali Dei Sailis, Arizebchinis Ishtausheles. That's what we just must be. That the whole Rotzen originally in the Aliyah Rotzen, Kedem HaTzimtzum, Afistalsheles, was koilel in itself that there would be certain kiloim shaloi b'derech ilava all of them. B'derech Sailis, and albeit b'derech Naila in the Inyan from Tzairis, always Makif to Yosha, but albeit Makif, always of course, it's all Niklal in that original Rotzen of Seder Hishtalsheles. Sure. Even though we had a big sort of cash in the middle from Zroya Starik Hanpin with the answer this, so that we get back to the whole Indian that the Amshochem from Moiches Timor to Chokma, the Atzilus, is Derech Seiris, and in an even from Chitzenius Seiris, Kesokosov, it comes from the Machiv of Oyer Yosho Ashayach El Makab. Ono, Amshochem Shel Maila Lagamri Miseidev Adrogis Aishtos. Now it's interesting to notice that whenever he's so far said this, that he's used the word Lagamri. In other words, that we're jumping quite in a high darga. When we say we're now going into the Pnimis Ayin, we say that this is Lamaila Lagamre, completely beyond the whole Inyan of the Hadroga of Ishtauselas. And ultimately you're staying in the same place in a way. You're still in Moiches Timor, or in Moiches Timor you're going into the Pnimius Shabor. There's a word of Machiv der Choyze Shabor. How she's Choyze betoich Atzmusa, in an even from Aliv Istalus Bepnimiusa. And what is that? We saw that was Atik. Pnimius, Atik. It was Atik. Atik is an Indian for Ner Takva. The Nivdal is something which is Mudal Betachlis from the Makablim. There was a Rebbe that Pnimius of Moiches Timor, or that is Lagamre Lamaila Miseidev Adrogus Eishtaushles. He said, Hu Mashanim Shub Meprinas Reisha Delois Yada She'ena B'minyan Eresasfilas. Even though that's Moiches Timor, and Moiches Timor is Chokme in Arich, or he said that's not Nimna in Ishtaushles. Meaning that what is Nimna in Ishtaushles, closer at Arich, is Nimna in Ishtaushles, that's only the Chitanias from Moiches Timor, but not the Pnimiyas. He said, Dan tu chad v'loi b'chushban. He said, that's the Indian of what we say, Antu chad v'loi b'chushban. Now what do we mean by saying Antu chad v'loi b'chushban? It's well known that the Etzem Musik von Echod, l'choyre includes that it's a Dover HaManu. If you say Echod, then you apply Shtayim v'sholem. Echad is called what we call a Mispara Siduri, or a Mispar Manui. In other words, you say Echad, you imply the Inyan does. However, there's another Inyan in Echad, it's brought down, a famous beer and citizen, the Sifri, Yesh Echad v'yein Sheni Loi. There's a certain Echad, but there's no Sheni to him, even though he's Echad, but ain't Sheni Loi. And what is the beer with them? The beer in them is that even though there's a certain Nasinus mocking to the Indian of Protim, but nonetheless all those Protim are all Misachtim or Misbatlim, they're like Abidaretim. In other words, you've already gone out of the Yochid of the Etzem, you've gone into Protim already, but in those Protim they're all Misbatlim or Mishachadim in the Indian of the Aleph Alufay. And even that they're mamish one beetle, one clothes sticker in a beetle. That's the pshat Antu Chad. And therefore we have to say V'loi b'chushban. We have to be shoyl the Inyan HaChushban. Because l'chera Chad implies Ayin Shochet. And therefore we say this as Amadrei, which Chad V'loi b'chushban. Now why do we have to be shoyl here the Inyan from Chushban? Because sof kol sof, Moiches Timor is in Arim. And therefore he says that's a in Inyan, that even though it's there, but it's not. It's in the Inyan from the Chushban, but it's not there. It's Mugduf in the Inyan from Chushban in Gans. In other words, that really sof kol sof, that's a Yochid. That's a Inyan from Yochid. Now, we bought it as Gefinzach in the whole Seder, which eventually leads to Protim, and to a certain extent, it's one of the Protim in a way, of a Mitzad Atzmiusay, this is Loi B'chushban, it's like I'm removed from the whole Cheshbon, and therefore, that's the Lashon of the Sifri, Yesh Echad Ve'ein Sheini Loi, that's a Inyan from Echad, of in Echad Gufa, L'mayla L'gamri from any Seder of Manui, of any Seder of a Seder, and therefore, Antu Chad V'loi B'chushban. But nonetheless, we still have to be shoyl the Minyan from Chushban. And that's it. From Reisha Deloi is Yado. But it's well known that Reisha Deloi is Yado does a Pnimis Atik Mamish. Does in the Gimel Reishin, it's well known as the Gimel Reishin, of which Moiches Timor is one of them. The highest of them is Pnimis Atik Mamish. And so Pnimis Atik is mislabish. In other words, that the highest ratio is mislabish in the next ratio. In other words, in Moiches Timor Mamish is mislabish ratio Deloi Ishada. And he's Ayin B'minyan Ha'esas Fides, down to Chad B'Lev Choshman, Gam Hamshocha Zu. And even this Hamshocha, Hagam Shezo Hamshocha Shelo Ele Der Adoritz Ishtausheles, Muchrach Leided, V'Limosheich Derech HaTzinoides, V'Cholal HaSayres. So the Rebbe said that even this Hamshocha, which has got no shaykhs to that original rotten of Ishtauseles, and it's not in the whole definitional status of Ishtauseles. It hasn't been nikva, being a Ishtauseles klal. He said, nonetheless, also Muchrach Leire Derech Atzinoides. Now, here we see this word Muchrach again. And that's what we spoke about earlier in this year. What's the taich Muchrach? What does it mean, Muchrach? So that's what we're mavaya, that here we're talking about Hamshochas Ha'etzem. Hamshochas Ha'etzem can only go through a tzamtzemus, b'suyemes. It can't just be nimshach, k'moishu, because it's l'mayla ha'ora, l'mayla me'elam gilui, it's the etzem. Therefore you can only bring the etzem if you do something with it. When you're talking about ha'oras, then ha'oras can just be nimshach, k'moishu. You can have a ha'ora which is l'mayla, that's soyiv, you can have a ha'ora yosem matumtum. But when you're talking about the etzem has to go, and that's why they use the expression muchrach. Yeah. And the Islam that he doesn't use the word muchrach here in the normal way when we say muchrach. We say that was the way the Ebshah wanted, that's why it's called muchrach. Here, the word muchrach is even more. If you want to bring mamish the whole etzem into a small area, then it can only go when the etzem itself goes. Well, that has to be, it can only be by, almost you might say by definition, by etzem abiur tzebedora, it has to come through this union of a chimtum ha'achmi. And therefore he uses the expression once again, but notice that he says it's muchrach leide v'li mosheich derech hatzinoidos, and here he puts in for the first time v'cholal asayros. Now up to now we haven't stressed the cholal of the side. We haven't really made a issue out of that. We just said that sayros are even symptoms suyam, not like hiliva'ol. Yeah, that we've spoken about slowly. It's a form of chitzenius azamin. In other words, we've been talking more about what you might say the etzem, how do you call it, the reed of the sayah, rather than the pnimis of the sayah tutur. But here he says clearly that it's the union of the chol of asayros. In other words, that pnimis of the sayros gufa, or the etzem just goes down through them like the famous moshel of the funnel, like a book. There's in Ayin Chesed, Rabbi's got a whole view over there, and what he calls a mashpeik. What a mashpeik means, a funnel. Yeah. So Limoshi derech hatzinoides v'cholol asayros. Ki bechinas atik u'moiches timor atzmon. The pnimis of them. Dainu bechinas pnimis moiches timor. Shu moichet atiko. We saw that's the maki for voyel choize, the pnimius, mamish of moiches timor, but that's sosum, mitzad the mikablim, not just mitzad the mikablim, sosum mitzad atzma, kenal efshe sheyove, lidei gilui rach alidei she'oiver, once again, notice the expression, efshe sheyove, lidei gilui rach alidei she'oiver, vanim shaterach yud gimel tfunei dikna, shemitzamtzem b'chol asaro. Now here we see once again l'chera ashinui in the lashon, which is mamish modia what I told you before. Mitzamtzem means that not something is being mitzamtzem, that not some koyach miba, you might say how would you use the expression, not a koyach mibachutz is being mitzamtzem. Well, the Indian is mitzamtzem. It in its own self has to be withdrawn into the mashpei, into the funnel. Yeah, and it allows that to happen because that's the way it's going to get to you. And where does that happen? In the cholol of the sayah, not in the chitzenius of the sayah. No, dafki in the cholol of the sayah. Yeah, v'hagam. Damshocha zu eino shenimshach ha'ora levad. He said, even though this is not a ha'ora, and that he's now strengthening that argument. This extra sentence here is like a chizuk to that idea. He said, if it goes to a sayah, then it's only a ha'ora. He said, no, that this amshocha is not nimshach by way of ha'ora. K'moy amshocha mimchitz chitayni etzakesa b'chokhma derech zayit, like we saw that from the chitaynius of moiches timor into chokhmas timor. Ki'im shenimshach b'chinas ho'atzmuth. Here's unusual. In the Lashonis of the Rebbe Rashab, in mitten derinnen, that he should use an expression like that. Ki'im shenimshu b'chinas ha'at. In other words, does it the Atzmi himself. In other words, that ultimately speaking, if you throw the right card on the table, you throw the right ball, then what you're really doing is throwing the Atzmi. So Eila Chanami later on we call it Etzem HaOyer, Shalamayla we call Gilui HaOyer, so the Rebbe does this for the Atzmas. For all points, it's got the same Klolium as Atzmas. It can't be Nimsha B'der HaOra. Now that's a pillar. And that's Yesh Leima. That's a whole we spoke about before. That's going to be Eliyasid Love. Eliyasid Love, well, that's going to be the cloud. That the Atzmius is going to be Nimsha. Good. Okay, guys, we'll hold there. Because I got to dump my own tonight. My first mutter, so I outside. Doesn't Kaddish. So I got to get things ready over there. Also make sure the bottom coming at the right time and everything. So we'll pause there for this evening. We're holding by a very good Indian. And then he goes on to say that's the Emsam Shocha Pnimiyas, the Nimshach Ha'atzmiyas. That's the Emsam Shocha Pnimiyas. In other words, the Emsam Shocha B'derech Pnimiyas is the Atzmi. Whatever Ha'oras come Derech Pnimiyas, that's not such a big deal. Whatever what the Atzmiyas come, that's the ultimate Kavona in Pnimiyas. For what's it do, Shinoirais and Inyonim do Kvelches Gate Pnimiyas is ultimately we want to bring the Atzmi. And that's the Inyan from the Atzmi. Nowadays when we talk about these sort of things, you just get from Moichen to looks from everybody, People are from Atat, it's most common Moshiach. Has to come Moshiach. You remember he's not paroled, he's doing very well. You remember Joe Shenling? Do you remember Joe Shenling? Yeah. He used to get very excited. So he learned that he didn't sit at you too. I remember he got up once and walked around and went back in the middle of the class. In the old days when we used to learn over there, he got up and walked around. He said, that's just something. All right, good. So nowadays everybody's, Moichin Gevoyim Yoter, All right, good. Okay, guys. So, Beis Hashem, I have to say a bit of talk for Geshem. That's how it's say. Muslim. All right.
We want to see it now.
Amen. So, you guys know how to turn this inside? I guess I'm going to go and get